Archetype is an architectural practice that not only believes in designing good buildings, but by designing those to be very sustainable and designing those through a really participatory process.
One of the things that we do with our approach to design is to make it really ecological and green and sustainable, and that's what we're doing with your new school.
We have a very collaborative, open way of working, and I think partly that's why we're good at doing that with user clients, because we're doing that with ourselves all the time. We all work in one studio space, there's a lot of design dialogue, really design discussion happens all the time in everything we're doing. So there's a lot of open working and a real passion for working in that sort of way.
We're looking to make a comfortable environment, but an inspiring environment for our occupants. So it's vital that we deliver the buildings as we say we will, which should to give these buildings that work, have a good functionality.
We do buildings all over the place. So we've got these where we're here, we're doing your school in Wolverhampton, we've done a school in Bristol, we do work in London. So
personally, I don't think that it's okay for architects just to take a brief and design. They really need to talk to listen, to engage and take the user of the building on a journey of discovery with us, out of which we develop and shape a building. For me and for Archetype, inclusive design is not just about meeting the technical requirements of access for everybody, whatever their abilities. It's really about including people in the process of design so that they become part of the building. And from our point of view as architects, the building that comes out of an inclusive process generally is a better building, very much rooted in the ideas and dreams and aspirations of the people that are going to use the building. So inclusive design is about including people in the process as well as making the building accessible to people.
Do you enjoy doing the job?
I do, yeah. Actually, the thing that I think we all enjoy most of all is designing school buildings and meeting people like you before we're building, then coming back and seeing you using the buildings.
We often find some very tangible examples of how things have happened in a building which, unless we talk to people and involve them in the building, they just wouldn't have been there. So for example, on the new school and children's centre that we did in Bristol, there's a very big Somali population, and one of the things that came out of talking to people was a requirement to have a foot bath so that before people pray a Muslim prayer, they can wash their feet and then pray. And a lot of thought had to go into actually getting that right. So quite technical, detailed stuff. Another example on a school we're developing in Wolverhampton at St Luke's. The school there has a very open, creative way of working. So we've basically eliminated corridors and such like that you'd normally have in a school to access different parts and brought that all together with some other shared facilities into a hub, which unless we talked to them and involved them and really started to understand how the school ticked and how they operated, we wouldn't have really been able to get that into the building. We wouldn't have known about it even.
The project that I joined to work Archetype for was the Willows School, being a combined special needs school with a primary school and a community element. It has a particular responsibility to be a highly inclusive and accessible building. In terms of the early briefing, we wanted to go beyond just accommodating structure for hoists. We wanted to make it look like it was actually fundamentally part of the design, so you wouldn't particularly notice the difference between going into a classroom, which is the primary school, and a Green Park, which is the special school. We wanted a kind of an equivalent, so the structure is kind of equivalent, but it allows the easy fit out of tracking for hoists, therefore making less distinction between these spaces.
Yeah, just because the children have special needs doesn't mean it should be institutionalised and should look like a hospital or somewhere. It shouldn't, the Green Park half of the school shouldn't look any different from the Stolon half of the school. There's no difference between the children in terms of their environment.
One of the issues that was drawn to our attention was the fact that angularity can be a problem for some children with autism, and we then looked at the idea of generating more curvilinear flowing type spaces which would help with kind of mobility and invite better mobility, because curved corners give much better visibility and give a more kind of flowing space. So that was something that we battled for relatively early on in the design, and we fought to kind of keep it in despite the kind of extra cost and the complexity that's put into the building. It's become part of the sort of design strategy for the building, is to have these kind of flowing curvilinear spaces. A special school, generally you're expecting to kind of heat to slightly higher temperatures in some of the spaces, and this can lead to extreme discomfort. And so we've looked in great detail with our heating and electrical engineer about how we can provide really good levels of ventilation. We're using heat exchange technology so we can provide a good flow of air. Otherwise, we're looking at cross ventilation, so you have access to openable windows, openable doors. The daylighting has been very carefully kind of considered to kind of create a general level of good daylighting, but controlled glare. When classrooms are facing south, we're using brise soleil to kind of give them protection from glare. We're using triple glazed windows. We're using, the building's super insulated, the 300 thick walls to kind of retain as much heat as possible to make it economic to run.
We all thought air conditioning had got to be the way, but actually I think they've opened our minds to think that there are lots of other better ways to keep our children cool when they need to be calm, but also to protect their very vulnerable children with complex health difficulties and ensure that they've got rooms that are well ventilated but very warm for them. And so I think that flexibility, that adjustment across the campus is going to be quite important.
It's probably even small things, putting a cupboard in the right place so that it can be used by a teacher, or it's putting the cupboard, is it a cupboard that the children can reach so that they can get things from it, or is it somewhere that actually needs to be more secure, so it's higher up or it's got a special door handle. One of the things with the Willows is, in fact, door handles is a really important part of where that's going in the whole school. Who's using this, who's getting from different places. Probably taps. It's another good example. In the Willows, there was when we did the consultation, the process of using a tap is actually quite an important learning experience for some of the children. So rather than just having one standard push button tap throughout the school, the idea is coming through that some taps need to be twisting taps. You need to have some that are levers, some that are push, so that actually by progressing through the school and using the different facilities, and the children are actually learning for different activities.
Our staff toilets at the minute are at the front reception area. You might be completely the other end of school and it's going to take you 5 minutes to dash up, dash back. That's time when you really wanted to be with the kids. It's not very productive. The lovely design about the school that we have now is they're very inclusive toilets. They're strategically positioned, so whether you're at the school pool, whether you're in the staff room, whether you're down in the reception area, everybody's got equal access.
Having kind of formed these spaces, we're kind of inviting your kind of participation in how they're going to be completed. Because of the nature of the resource, having a clear wayfinding system is going to be very important. So it's been great to have worked with James as an artist who's particularly worked on aspects of wayfinding before, and he's looking to kind of establish a principle of symbols or very recognisable sort of objects that could be used and kind of have a very direct kind of meaning, and will help provide kind of clues about finding ways to kind of key spaces like dining spaces like the PE halls, etc.
Something like a lettuce where the little child came up with us, that as those leaves break away, they don't necessarily have to go in a kind of uniform line. It becomes a very pleasurable visual trail that you go upon.
It's important for anybody coming into the building to have a sort of clear sense of how to get around, but it's important for any child in the building to have confidence about getting from one space to another, feeling at home in the building, not feeling intimidated by the building, having fun in the building. Who likes the green? What do you think of the green, James? So we consider absolutely everybody that's going to be using that building, whether it's the cleaning staff, the transport staff, the catering staff, the teaching assistants, the teachers, as well as parents, as well as governors, as well as local community, and of course the children.
We've had a lot of involvement in our new school, and we've looked at the plans, and we've worked with Green Park children to see how we can make it a happy place for them and for the community, and Stowlawn Primary as well. And we've all had involvement in it, and I'm sure it's going to be even better than Stowlawn Primary School is now.
I think that what our architects, Archetype, have done for us is that they've really listened. They've listened to exactly what we need. Then what they've done is they've taken that information away and they've turned it into something that's special for us, because this building, it's going to be very unique and it's purpose built for what we need, and I think that's what Archetype have done for us.
The building that we're going to get is better than the one we thought we were going to get, and we are convinced that this will be a flagship school for this area, for this authority, and will give some direction to others in the BSF programme who are following on from us as to what a good school should look like.
When we talk about involving communities in the build and having a quality environment to impact on teaching and learning, when we do this sort of a process, we get a real sense of achieving that. I think in the past we've not been so good at that, and we've perhaps looked back on the end result and thought, well, we could have done that much better. But because the schools are involved in the process, I think that they've got much more of an angle on teaching and learning, and we can see the benefits being reaped for that.
This is the view from the stage looking out. So if you use the whole hall, which you could open it up and have a big assembly in the whole hall, then that's the kind of view you'd get.
The architect's input into every meeting and every visit that we've done has empowered us to go ahead and take strides that we probably wouldn't have taken on our own. It has encouraged staff and pupils to work together, and we feel that that is because Archetype gave us that vision and gave us that empowerment to take this on board and to do what we thought was right for our schools in this environment.
And there's a real sense of the communities being able to come into the schools once they're completed and see what impact they've actually had on the design along with staff and children. And I think it's fair to say that the work that's been done with Archetype has been included within the children's curriculum. So they've had an impact throughout the build, they've seen the building progress, they've been taken round and shown what's gone on. And so there's a real sense of ownership.
We definitely believe that it's our duty to raise people's aspirations rather than just getting away with the easiest solution. Now, at the end of the day, that doesn't make our job easier. It makes it more difficult, but it also makes it more fun. It makes it more satisfying at the end of the day when we can see people occupying a building which we know is the best we could possibly achieve for them. So it's not just about physical barriers, it's about the feel of the place, that you feel invited, you feel comfortable when you're there, the children feel supported, they feel relaxed and able to study and to learn and to play, that the teachers feel they're well provided for, they're supported, the building enables them to do their job properly, that parents feel comfortable with their children coming to the school, they feel that the building is really somewhere that they don't just have to go to, they want to go to, they enjoy going to. They love going to, they want other people to go to and be part of.
Our school doesn't work in isolation, it relies on the primary care trust, on voluntary sectors, and they also engaged with those stakeholders. In particular, there were really effective meetings with the primary care trust, so we had physios, occupational therapists, sensory inclusion teachers, people who all were very specialists in aids, adaptations, equipment, colour schemes, so that they actually looked at what those professionals felt needed to be into the building to make it a really effective learning environment. And I think that period of consultation has made a massive impact on the actual design that we're going to have as a school.
So inclusive design is not just about that early consultation. We work very hard to carry on keeping people involved, engaged in that process right the way through. And so for us it's absolutely critical that we find ways of describing the building that help people to understand what it is we're proposing. So rather than just a dry set of drawings, we do use 3D modelling which help us design but actually help us to help other people understand the design. We find physical model making really useful. People like nothing better than having a physical model, small scale, large scale, that they can actually touch, they can look inside, they can pull apart. 3D models on the computer, you can actually take people walking through the finished building and actually stop and pause and ask them if they like that or what their thoughts are. It's actually helping them to relate to what it is you're proposing.
We've encouraged whenever possible for the children to kind of be engaged through the contractor with the process of the actual build. And so the children can actually see, it's an animated process on their doorstep, particularly when you have a sort of prefabricated timber frame being craned into place, and they can start to see the building sort of happening literally in front of their eyes. And it's been another part of the arts programme has been to kind of engage the children in terms of their anticipated change and their occupancy in the new building. And some of the artists have been working with them on objects that they're going to be taking to the new building, thinking about, discussing the new building and the new spaces and how they're going to be occupying it and how they're going to be working there. They're engaged with the architect, with the construction and the imminent kind of occupation of their, the new space and the new building.
A design and access statement is something which is now required to be provided with the planning application, which sets out, I think it's quite a good thing that you're required now not just to present drawings but to set out the design intentions and how you're making a building accessible. So it's a document which basically goes with the drawings to really describe and set out the philosophy and the approach to design access in the building. Now, at one level, that could just be a very straightforward dry document that you just knock off just before the application goes in, just to try and back up your application. But I think actually it can be something much more than that. It can basically be a living document that starts as the design develops, as you map out some of the main objectives from a design point of view, and then use it as a tool to sort of develop and refine that design alongside the drawings, so that it really becomes something which encapsulates the whole idea of the building and is not just a technical requirement. It's actually then something which really expresses in another way what you're trying to achieve in the building in terms of design and access and that whole thing really.
That archetype, the philosophy with buildings is if you could build a building in a green way, why wouldn't you? And it's the same with access, isn't it? If you can build a building that's accessible to everyone, why would you suddenly build a building that only half the people can get in and use properly? There's no reason to build a building that people can't use.
And obviously when you're designing a building, you're balancing all sorts of different requirements. You've got the site, you've got the technical requirements, you've got building regulations, you've got building bulletins for schools that specify how much ventilation and heating and all those sort of things. Lots and lots of complex technical requirements. The skill of the architect is to manipulate all those technical requirements and create something which is practical and aesthetic. But I think, again, involving people in that process just brings so much more into that.